Have you ever heard the phrase, tone is in your hands? Today we're going to talk about what that means. What's up everyone, I'm Rhett Shull, welcome back to another video. So I decided to do a cover this time for my little intro video, and I wanted to do a Hendrix song for a few reasons. One, I'm a massive Hendrix fan, but two, I think he's a great example of the concept that we're going to talk about today, and that is the idea of using touch dynamics to change the feel and the tone of your guitar sound. Whenever I think about my favorite guitar players, this is the one thing that they all have in common, from Derek Trucks to John Mayer to Robin Ford to Jimi Hendrix. They all have a great sense of dynamic control, and a lot of that comes from the way they're actually attacking the strings with either their pick or their hands. So we're going to talk about that today, and I'm going to show you some ways to practice and help develop this technique in your own playing. So before we get into that, let's talk about the track for a second and the gear I used to get those tones. The amp I was playing was my Port City Pearl. It's an all clean pedal platform amp, and all of the overdrive tones I was using came from the Vertex Ultraphonics. This is their brand new pedal. It's basically a Dumble overdrive special in a box. Vertex sent this to me to demo, and rather than just doing another pedal demo video, I figured I would use one of the strong points of this pedal to teach you guys this concept. For me, one of the hallmarks of a good piece of gear, whether it's a good pedal or a good amp, is how touch sensitive it is. Does it clean up with your picking without having to change any knobs or roll the volume off on your guitar? So I'm going to throw this back on my board and we're going to talk about the first technique. Okay, so what we're going to do is take a look at a blues style lick. It's a lick that Robin Ford plays a lot that I got from his Help the Poor solo. And I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to play that lick that emphasizes different parts of the phrase and pulls out different tones. So for reference, here is my clean tone. And here is the Ultraphonics. So the lick in question goes like this. So it's a fun lick in D minor. Here it is slowed down. So that's kind of the bass line. Every note I'm playing is picked. It's picked at the same volume, and you notice the dynamic doesn't really change. It stays pretty level the whole time. So first thing I'm going to do is change the volume at the beginning of the lick versus the end of the lick. I'm going to play the first part of the phrase quietly and softly, and I'm going to end it big. And this is actually pretty close to how Robin plays it on the recording. So, right? So you can hear at the beginning I'm barely picking. And it increases in dynamic as I get towards the end of the phrase. Right, let's try it on the neck pickup and see how it sounds. So this is a really great way to recycle old licks that maybe you are tired of playing or tired of hearing yourself play. For me, this is one. I play that lick way too often. That's another way to breathe new life into old licks that you've played thousands of times before. Be conscious of where you're placing the dynamics in the line. All right, so one of the reasons I picked Voodoo Child Blues to cover was because I think Hendrix was a master at this idea of playing with picking dynamics. That track perfectly illustrates the next technique I want to show you, which is actually to drop the pick altogether and just play with your fingers. So when I'm doing this, I will tuck my pick in between my ring finger and middle finger here, and that's where it lives while I'm picking with my fingers. So I've switched to my Strat here, and the whole guitar for this song is tuned down a half step, which gives you a really mean kind of tone. I'm actually loving playing in this tuning because I feel like it makes the guitar sound 10 times better, but maybe that's another video. So I'm going to put the Ultraphonics where I had it for the video, which is bringing the gain up a little bit and the volume down. I'm leaving the mid control right at 12 o'clock. It may be kind of hard to see that on the camera there, but that mid control is just right at noon, and that's giving me this tone. So that sounds pretty good, but if you remember the tone at the top of the track, it wasn't picked, it was played with your fingers, and it sounded more like this. So on this first line, I mean, there's almost no overdrive or gain on that sound at all. It almost sounds clean, but just for reference, here is my clean signal so you can hear what the Ultraphonics is doing. So obviously a volume boost, but there is some saturation going on there as well. So the second half of the phrase, he totally changes the dynamics up and it really grabs your attention in the track. So he comes back in with this line. And he does that unison bend up an octave. And when he does that, he switches back to the pick. So you get this crazy kind of huge shift in dynamics from the nice clean. Then he picks the E and the B string together with his fingers, and he really digs in so you get that nice overdrive starting to come through. And then slide up 6th string to the unison bend with the pick. So together it's... Then he goes into that killer intro solo there. One thing that may not be coming across in the video is actually how light I'm picking with my fingers here. I mean, I'm really barely touching the strings. So that's one thing to practice. Don't be afraid to see how light you can actually attack the string while still getting a nice clean note. The other thing to think about here too is the attitude, right? These notes are really short, they're cut off at the beginning. It's really soft, really quiet, and that's part of what makes the massive impact of the song when he comes into the... really grabs your attention there at the beginning of the track, and then the drums come in and the bass and the organ, and it feels so good. That's what I love about Hendrix's playing. All right, so for the last example, I switched to a humbucker guitar, and I'm gonna bring the gain on the Ultraphonics up a little bit more to about 2 o'clock. Now we're gonna go back to that Robin Ford lick that we did at the beginning of the video, but this time we're gonna hybrid pick. If you're not familiar with hybrid picking, that's a technique where you're using your pick and your fingers to play a phrase together. It's really popular in the country world, the chicken picking world, but it can also be used in a lot of different contexts, including this sort of Robin Ford-esque blues kind of line. So here's the line again. Now I'm gonna play it hybrid picked and you can hear the difference. So you can tell it adds a different sort of timbre and tone to the notes that I'm picking with my middle finger. So here's just a phrase with the pick. Here it is, hybrid picked. You hear the difference on the F. Has a much more percussive quality to it. Another thing that I'm doing at the beginning of that phrase to sort of change the dynamic is I'm actually palm muting down here. So rather than just going, I'm palm muting at the beginning of the phrase to help add to that build. So, as with the other two techniques, throw this on top of a lick that you're already familiar with, that you may be tired of playing or tired of hearing, and see where it takes you. You'll find, especially when you're playing more with your fingers, that it opens you up to different phrasing that you wouldn't normally play with just a pick. This is one great way to break out of a rut that I don't see a whole lot of people talking about here on YouTube. So let me know in the comments what you think about this technique, and if there's things that you use to practice dynamics that maybe I didn't mention here. Huge thanks to Vertex Effects for sponsoring today's video. If you want more information on the Ultraphonics or want to know where you can buy one, there will be a link in the description box down below, as well as links to all of the gear that I use to make my videos. Be sure to check me out on Twitter and Instagram if you want to stay up to date with what I've got going on in the musical world. There you can also find more information about when and where I'm playing shows. I've got quite a few shows coming up through the fall of 2018. So if you want to come catch me live with one of the bands I'm playing with, you can check that out there or on my website, which is also linked down below. Anyways, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching. I'm Rhett Shull, and remember, there is no plan B.